It would be very troubling if I were so foolish as to believe that the violence and mayhem and cruelty that has been leashed on me by gangs in places like the University of Pittsburgh and St. Louis Post-Dispatch have engaged in domestic terror in an attempt to silence my editorial journalism. To believe that it would work now in the midst of what they may call the Second Yom Kippur War, October 9th, 2023, for me to be silent would be um, superstitious. Um, when gangs like these declare um, a purpose to targeting someone, reasoning with them is pointless. And given how gifted Pitt, for example, was pro Reagan, pro Trump, pro Putin, given how gifted these persons are at playing both sides, it would be irresponsible not to point out that what happened in Israel and Sukkot was a suspicious intelligence failure. It's hard to believe sometimes one or the other side didn't both know it was coming. So, what would be the purpose of that? Um, they must have done something together that they're covering for. The magnitude of the University of Pittsburgh's faith in the idea that might makes right has not been lost on me over the decades of testifying against the murder of my father and being tortured by their attaches. It's not respectable, but the obvious lack of respectability of their position goes far in giving them camouflage because people say they're a respectable institution. Mac, what makes you think they wouldn't behave respectably? Their position playing both sides, which is depressingly easy to cite in regarding Seattle. Have made clear that one of their institutional objectives is to work together to cover up for what I discovered investigating the origin of AIDS and suffered as a target in COVID. So they're obviously both sides are engaging in some sort of business before pleasure sweep of humanity's text of dignity and human rights. So mayhem seems to be a constant on both sides. And maturity seems to be absent on both sides. They have some sort of sly militarist conclusion that they've reached about how to proceed against the masses. Well, it helps to give them the cover story of national border disputes and ethnic disputes and so forth, when their real objective is to militarize. We have two Vlads facing off in Ukraine, which is like two virgins, the pussy ball game that was clocked to the AIDS attack. So I'm going to go into some of that, but my main purpose is to state that I've begun my master's thesis, bibliography, which will cover such things as Foucault's meetings with the Ayatollah for the Reagan administration setting up of the hostage crisis and what it pretended, what his acolyte Sean Straub was doing at the Dakota December 8th, 1980. The meaning of Will Zell's performance on behalf of Joseph Goebbels and Leslie Katz, how Robert Fripp rendered it public schools complaint, and the origins at Fayum of counterfeiters who created the great dictators in the Hollywood mogul system, giving rise to the occult fascination of the Cubists with the fourth dimension, and Blysender's plan for ultimately what became Lenin's Houdini espionage, industrial espionage, his disappearing act to control the media tower in the AIDS attack and the legacy issues involved in how he simply helped himself to the enigma of a Pittsburgh public school student as a symbol for him of America, claiming I dropped a bomb on his girlfriend from a past life in Japan. Well, if you look at some of the particulars that are involved in this case, we come across, if we get around Obama's writhing and whimpering and whinging like a petulant little girl when it comes to a one night stand put together by Germany, Schulman, and India in Pittsburgh for play by Oliver Stone, Putin, and Ming-Na Wen, Pentagon Disney. Both sides were at work in declaring religious mandate that we institute marriage laws as martial laws and put home invasion systems into everybody's houses and so forth. Traces to a script by Gay L. Carolyn Burston and Am Daguerre from Israel, which is the homophone for Christian Armageddonism. Gay on his poems, Bursting, Christmas Caroling, Gay L. Carolyn Bursting, you get the idea. And the gays in Seattle kicking the door down to claim Ono ransom and so on. I mean, it's an enormity. It's just ridiculous what they got away with the bills. Paul McCartney spouts that he decides what is valuable and to who and so on. Well, there's a lot of ruthless riddles. Like Ian Wattenmaker got me to shoot a bird with a BB gun. BB. See, BB is like there was a Wade BB, which is like Henry Wade. He was the sheriff in Roe versus Wade who framed Oswald. So the story of the bird, they called this script. Get it? And it's about JFK. So when you have Oswald working at Jagger's Stovall, Gale was from the Holocaust survivor community, Stovall, these people would just assume put all of you in his stove. Well, this is a sort of ruthless riddle that goes on. I'm not going to bog down everybody with ruthless riddles, but you can get the idea of the frightful scene that they're putting on. And they have things that they're not admitting. Like I saw teleportation at Carnegie Mellon's arrangement. So what I think is that what we need to do is understand that the fundamentalist tripartite system that the more butch people in office put together isn't new. Iran played a missionary for Oliver North and it between Israel back in the days when they were setting up the hostage crisis with Michael Foucault. The suicide missions of Sean Straub and others, which have made the Seattle executives stand by in awe of Ringo Starr's brilliance. And you know, just the whole missile arrangement to raise money to mine harbors in Nicaragua was symbolic of the fundamentalist arrangements between the high command in Iran, Israel, and Washington, D.C. when it comes to brokering the business of controlling the population through supreme executive values symbolized by home peep spy cam so that nobody be allowed to make love out of wedlock. I mean, the whole situation with degrading me and abusing me and stereotyping me and symbolizing me is a disgraceful entrapment program run by a giant pornography company out of Japan, working with Yoko Ono when I was a grade school child. So clearly, Washington, D.C. executive people have it in for the dignities of people who are public school students. It's not like just because Penis Gabriel has a mind to deny it, there's not evidence that I was tortured by the Jewish Holocaust survivor community. It's not like there's not evidence and proof of that fact. But they consider themselves the strong, might makes right. So they set up a little performance of Love American Style in Strongsville, where they manipulated covertly striking individual with predictable results. They drove her to suicide. Somehow miraculously she survived, but they made it a point of taking her hostage by putting her into prison for the crime of having her fuses blown by pit neurohypnosis experts. And that's what they consider might makes right. You know, they use Strongsville as their performance art stage in this endeavor. And of course, it's the same symbols that they used when they poisoned and tortured me. So it's a sandwich. And why they would engage in a spiritual confederacy so prolonged and anti-humanist, you know, considering it some sort of biblical text beamed down by aliens for missionaries from Star Trek. You know, rather than teach what needs to be taught in public schools with respect for the future of our children is lost in the personality cults and ego logic of Mick Jagger, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, the terrible infancy of Obama. I don't know how to address these things. To be truthful, I think the immaturity is scarier than the biblical prophecies.